Welcome back to the Dark Reading News Desk at RSA25. Terry Sweeney here with Dark Reading, and joining me now is Mahesh, Country Manager for India from Varonis. Mahesh, thank you for joining us on the Dark Reading News Desk.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Especially appreciate you being here as a representative of the world's most populous country, India. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, like I said, pleasure doing this, Terry.
Let's dive in, especially with this recently passed privacy bill, the Digital Personal Data Protection Act in India. This regulates processing of both personal data and protects individual privacy rights. Start us off with how this regulation is influencing how companies are approaching their data security in India.
Yeah, we are really excited about this bill, and because I think the enforcement of the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill actually means that the security and privacy is going to be an integral part of organizations' businesses and operational frameworks. So it mandates organizations to be a lot more transparent and accountable in dealing with personal information, which means organizations have to look at embedding privacy by design into most of their frameworks that they're establishing. And they have to be more accountable in collecting data, obtaining consent from consumers on why they are collecting personal data, what is the intent, how are they going to be processing it, and the data subjects are given more rights, where they can even mandate organizations to tell what all personal data they are having about them, how are they going to process it, and if they want, they can also request these organizations to go and delete it. But the most important thing, which is still not enforced significantly in India, is now organizations will be mandated to report regulatory breaches in a very, very short duration, right? So which means we are interacting with a lot of CISOs. We are helping them to do these personal privacy impact assessments. But what we are trying to understand, based on discussions, what we are understanding from CISOs is like they are in the process of performing assessments, understanding what sort of people, process, and technology controls need to be in place for them to be better prepared to comply to these once it's enforced. But at the same time, we are all actually very, very excited. The whole security community, which is customers, consultants, partners, OEMs, we are all excited about helping customers embrace the journey, because I think once we do this, we are going to have a tremendous growth, because India is going to be, Indian businesses are going to be more transparent and accountable with the way we deal with information, and that's going to increase customer loyalty, brand loyalty, and increase trust with consumers, which I think is a significant thing for us to have sustained growth. So we are excited.
All right. Well, breach disclosure is never popular with anyone. Well, not with companies anyway. There's the bureaucratic piece, but there's also just like the uncomfortableness of the disclosures. Was there some pushback from companies in India as this legislation was being considered?
No, there was the good part was the government. Once they drafted a bill, they consulted with a lot of different stakeholders. From the security leadership, from the IT leadership, the executives, senior executives, etc., to understand government agencies, regulators, other regulators like Reserve Bank of India and things like that. So that actually ensured that it's a collaborative effort.
Okay.
There were a lot of iterations to the bill. It was going for a very long time, and now it's sort of passed in the parliament and would be enforced anytime, I think. But the good part was it was consulted with different stakeholders, and I think organizations are really excited to embrace this.
All right. Well, let's shift gears slightly, and I think because it's RSA, we're obliged to talk about artificial intelligence. Most enterprises are doing a lot with AI, whether they're using packages like Copilot or developing their own internal AI. With the customers that you talk to, what are some of the risks of that are on their minds? What are you hearing from CISOs and CXOs in general about AI?
Yeah, the biggest theme in the conference is AI. We went to the expo place and everybody's just talking about AI. I think, based on, again, our interactions with a lot of customers who already have embraced AI is actually a data problem. Data is the source code for AI, right? So predominantly the two biggest concerns are data security and privacy, because they really do not know, because businesses embraced AI without sometimes even consulting IT or security. They really do not know why businesses are using these tools, visibility to how AI is being used, right? We see a lot of shadow AI. Businesses have embraced it, they're already using it, and then security comes to know that, oh, probably these AI tools are already being used, like public ChatGPT and things like that.
So this regulation is well timed, it seems.
Regulation is going to be enforced for AI too. I think discussions are on, but privacy is going to make, the privacy regulation is going to make businesses and security leaders think about how to embrace AI securely, right? So the biggest problem is visibility. Why businesses are using these AI tools? What data sets is it going to touch? Why is it touching the data set? Is it going to introduce any regulatory risk or security risk for organizations? Or is the attack surface increasing because of AI adoption? I think these are some predominant concerns that customers have, and we are also helping organizations to assess risk around AI adoption, like Copilot and things like that. And when we perform these assessments, the two broader outcomes that comes out of these assessments as gaps is, of course, lack of visibility. There's a lot of data being overexposed because people didn't actually think about data security, data exposure internally. They were all mostly worried about data getting exfiltrated, but with no boundaries now for data. Data is the boundary or the perimeter. I think organizations are starting to understand that data also needs to be controlled. Access to data also needs to be controlled for internal users, their trusted supply chain, contractors, etc. So, and when we do these assessments, data is exposed phenomenally, and AI is compounding this problem significantly. So I think the most important concerns broadly is data security and privacy when it comes to AI. And then about embracing LLM security like data poisoning, data tampering, prompt monitoring, prompt injection. Those are there, but broadly it's around data security and privacy.
Okay. With the advent of AI, it feels like many organizations, most organizations in fact, are trying to strike the right balance between embracing the innovation that generative AI can deliver, but also needing to mitigate both the security and financial risks. You were alluding to this, I think, a little bit just a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
What are you hearing? What are you telling customers in India about? What is that balance? How do you balance the promise and the peril at the same time?
Yeah. I really like the way you use the word balance, right? So the problem is innovation supersedes security, right? And of course, organizations have a lot of pressure to innovate and have that competitive edge. And so they go and adopt that faster, and then security is considered as an afterthought. But I think security has to be designed when organizations are looking at innovating and enforcing controls around innovation, right? That's the problem. So I think since in this case, businesses have adopted AI or already compelling IT and security teams to help them embrace AI, it's very, very critical for organizations to understand how the attack surface is going to increase because of the adoption of tools like AI, right? And GenAI is going to complicate problems significantly, I think, for organizations. I touched upon it earlier. So when we perform these Copilot readiness assessments, right? I mean, I'll just tell you some stories. We have seen, a new employee joined and he wanted to understand more about his boss. So he just put in a prompt to know about the boss. And he interestingly got his salary details. He's got a lot of personal details about them. And it was funny, right? And what it's like the dopamine effect. People, when they interact on social media, they start interacting with a friend and they suddenly get addicted and start sharing a lot of information. So I think the first time with tools like GenAI, users don't have malicious intent, but they accidentally get access to information that triggers them to do a lot of stuff which is funny and risky for organizations, right?
Well, I mean, you make a good point. I mean, that dopamine rush of what else can I find out with this tool? What else is available to me?
Right, and imagine the problem getting compounded because data breach hackers are not breaking in, right? They're just logging in now into organizations. All it takes for them is to get a credential of some user, and if the blast radius for that user is high in terms of is huge in terms of data, then tools like these GenAI is going to make it very easy for hackers to go and get information that they want to. I mean, they don't have to do any complex hacking techniques to go and get access to information, and that is a biggest concern that organizations are having, right? So, how do they ensure that the data sets that are touched by AI is what it's actually need to touch? Data, it's not touching data that it should not. And once regulatory information or sensitive information gets into an LLM, God knows how to take it out from it, right? So it's very, very critical to ensure that sensitive data or regulatory data doesn't get into LLMs unless it's needed. and the organizations have to secure it. So it's again, like I said, data is the source code for AI.
Right.
And organizations need to have an effective AI data governance, and if they do that, AI also gets governed very well. And they'll be able to contain a lot of risks because of AI adoption.
Thank you. Data security posture management, or DSPM, has become quite a buzzword in our industry. Real briefly now, can you talk about how organizations can operationalize DSPM to make sure that they derive the maximum benefit from it?
Yeah, I hope organizations don't think DSPM as a buzzword, right? It's finally there to deliver some business outcomes. And typically organizations look at data security posture management for normally 3 reasons: reduce breaches, be more compliant, and get more visibility around threats, complex threats around data, right? And if they do that, they'll be able to adopt, like you mentioned, Gen AI more securely, confidently, and that's going to be making them more efficient operationally and get that competitive edge. So I think it's very critical when organizations look at operationalizing DSPM, or data security posture management. Is it aligned towards the business outcomes that they want to, and how soon they want to achieve those outcomes, right? That's very, very critical. So what we normally recommend organizations when they look at operationalizing DSPM is, yes, it's important to understand what data is critical, do that discovery comprehensively across data stores and get that visibility. But most organizations think that that is data security posture management. And unfortunately, because most of the vendors also preach customers that way, discovery, getting visibility is critical. But that is a prerequisite to achieve the outcomes that organizations are aspiring when they make investments with tools like DSPM, right? So once they get the visibility is where the actual job starts. How are they going to mitigate the risks that they discover through this discovery activity, and how this tool can help them to automate risk remediation? That becomes the most important thing, because when organizations look at operationalizing it, if automation is not part of their strategy, mostly they will be continuing to, they will struggle to understand how to remediate risk, because data is growing very fast, data is very dynamic, and if the tools that they choose is not providing capabilities to automatically remediate risk highlighted through the platform, it's going to make things extremely bad for organizations, extremely, I would say, time consuming for organizations to get the outcomes that they want. And the last part of DSPM is, of course, tracking activity and misconfigurations, etc. Because I think organizations, while they deployed comprehensive SOC frameworks, SOC and SOAR platforms, still most SOC platforms are good in detecting identity-centric threats, infrastructure-centric threats, but not identity or information-centric threats. So that's where DSPM can actually help them to detect information-centric threats faster by tracking how users are engaging with data continuously. So the way I would engage with data at Varonis is going to be drastically different if my credentials are with a hacker or used by a malware. And if organizations don't understand that behavior of a user and how they're interacting with data, it's going to be very, very tough to detect complex threats. So that's how I think organizations need to, just to summarize, do discovery, ensure it happens fast, but also look at leveraging automation to mitigate these risks quickly and pass this intelligence about data activity to their threat intelligence platforms to understand complex threats and contain it.
Well, Mahesh, thank you so much for this deep dive on India and security and the dynamics and challenges that the Indian market is up against. Thank you so much for joining the Dark Reading News Desk.
Pleasure. Great to have this discussion. Thank you so much.
We've been talking with Mahesh from Varonis. This has been Terry Sweeney for the Dark Reading News Desk. Thanks for joining us for this segment. We'll see you next time.